Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my twice weekly webcast, which is going out live this morning as it usually does. It's Sunday the 27th of August. The sun is shining outside at the moment, though clouds have been building up, and of course if you were out and about yesterday you probably noticed several bands of thunderstorms crossed the country. So hopefully nothing quite as dramatic as yesterday. Sue's looked in. Good to see you, Sue. Hi. What else have we got for you in the show today? Well, 4 dead at a biker bar shooting in California. Meanwhile, a New York cop has killed a biker by throwing a picnic cooler at him. Motorcycles are exempt from a congestion charge which was to be introduced in Cambridge. I'll give you the latest updates on that. But if you've got a supercar in South Australia, you're going to need a new licence for it. There have been 2 deaths, sadly, at the Manx Grand Prix this year and a failed drugs tests. And Motor Morini are set to show off new ranges of twin-cylinder motorcycles. Kawasaki's hybrid, that may be appearing for 2025. Got a quick item on that. And we'll also have a look at the pre-production Damon Hypersport, which allegedly has been test-ridden. Right, and finally, in today's in-depth item, I'll be continuing on the theme that I've been looking at about motorcycle and road safety generally, and be asking if push notifications, active push notifications to vehicles, could make riding safer. So stay with me for the next 20 or 30 minutes. Clive has also looked in. Good to see you, Clive. Don't forget, if you've got a question, any comments, anything you want to ask as the show goes on, do respond live. I'll try to respond equally live if I possibly can. If not, I'll get back to you at the end of the show. Right, so what have we got for you today? Well, let's bring in some news. The first item on the news, a fairly shocking one. 4 people, including the gunman, are dead after a shooting at a popular bikers bar in Southern California. John Snowling, a former police officer, was identified as the suspect in the incident, which left 6 others wounded on Wednesday evening. It's believed that the retired law enforcement officer who was shot and killed by police was targeting his estranged wife Marie. Despite early reports that she'd not survived the attack, it seems that she is actually recovering from her injuries at the Providence Mission Hospital, Viejo. Meanwhile, in New York, a detective in the Bronx narcotics unit has been suspended without pay after he knocked a man off a motorcycle during a drug bust on Wednesday. Police were running a buy and bust sting operation in the Bronx when Eric Dupree attempted to ride away on a motorcycle after trying to sell narcotics to a group of plainclothes officers. Sergeant Eric Duran threw a picnic cooler at Dupree's head. That caused him to hit a tree and a car before he fell from the bike. He was later pronounced dead at the scene. One report says Duran has received 17 allegations of police misconduct since joining the department. The New York Attorney General's office has opened an investigation into the incident and promises a full, thorough and transparent investigation. Now, if you were watching the show back in October last year, then you would know that one of my stories that month was that the latest city to attack motorcycling was Cambridge, where the Greater Cambridge Partnership, GCP, was proposing to charge motorcycles to enter a sustainable travel zone around the city. And that's the map of it there. I'll just zoom in onto it a little so you can see a little bit more clearly where it actually lies. Now, under the plans, which were apparently made without any public consultation, all motorised vehicles were to be charged a flat rate of £5 a day. Now, Motorcycle Action Group, MAG, they apparently tried to engage with the group, but didn't get anywhere. So they made a public one of the Freedom of Information requests, and what they discovered was that one of the reasons for charging motorcycles was that it would be, quote, a strong deterrent to proliferation. That is, by charging motorcycles, what they would do would deter drivers from switching from using their car to using a motorcycle. Now, other arguments against motorcycles included the claim that they were an inherently less safe mode of transport. They also claimed that motorcycles were incompatible with pedal cycles, and they also made a debatable claim that motorcycles offered no significant improvement on congestion reduction, sustainable travel, or air quality and safety benefits. Now, a truly baffling statement was that rear number plate images are harder to accurately capture. I have to say that the ULEZ zone doesn't seem to have any problem. Not surprisingly, MAG claimed that the plans were based on misinformation and prejudice, and though I rarely agree with the usual claims that motorcycles are more fuel efficient and thus less polluting, I think in this case the basis for their objections were right. Now, here's the good news. After a majority of 24,000 people responded negatively to the STZ in a belated public consultation, revised plans have now been published. Now, here are the main points. Charges will only apply during peak hours. Local businesses will get a 50% discount for vans and HGVs. Locals on low incomes will also get a 50% discount. All car drivers are to be given 50 free days, and there will also be exemptions for those needing to travel to hospital by car, or for those in repeat of carer benefits and personal mobility payments. So that's good news. But the really good news here is that they have now decided that there will be no charges for motorcycles. Now, Greater Cambridge Partnership Chief Executive, one Rachel Stoppard, she said that the quote, updated measures are not the preferred option, but that quote, we have listened to feedback, which is good news. Now, spokesman for the partnership also said that the scaled back plans would raise 26 million a year, which is rather less than the 50 million that they were originally hoping for, but they still said they had enough money to fund a new, cheaper bus network, which is good news all round. I think everybody seems to win with this revision. So, okay, on with the news. What else have we got for you today? Well, the South Australian government has actually introduced a new U-class driver's licence for supercars. Now, all cars with a power to weight ratio equal to or exceeding 276 kilowatts per tonne, that's 370 brake horsepower per 1,000 kilograms if you want the metric there, are all included in the new law. Now, interestingly, the legislation also bans drivers from turning off aids such as anti-lock braking, automated emergency braking, traction control and electronic stability control. Those are all now banned from being turned off. So it will apparently affect around 270 drivers in the state. They'll all be required to secure this new U-Class licence. They have to do it by December the 1st, 2024, so they've got a while yet. And to qualify, they don't have to take a new test, but they do have to complete an upcoming online course, which will cover risk awareness, the utilisation of these advanced driver assistance systems, and the safe operation of their vehicles. Now, additionally, drivers who engage the sport mode of their supercar within built-up areas, if that happens to cause a crash which results in fatalities or serious harm, they could face new charges under an aggravated offence with these new laws. Now, these have all been brought in the wake of the death of a 15-year-old South Australian girl, Sophia Naismith. She was struck and killed by a Lamborghini Huracan in 2019. Now, the South Australia government claim that they are seeking to strike a balance between preserving the thrill of driving these high-performance vehicles and safeguarding public safety. So, why am I talking about cars on a motorcycle channel? Well, there's an obvious question, really, isn't there? If cars are getting treatment how long is it before high performance motorcycles are looked at under the same sort of scrutiny. Right, thanks to Malk incidentally for that particular item. Got a couple of comments here. We have Damon looking in, Terry looking in, John looking in. He said he managed to dodge the showers yesterday. Today looks to be a better day to be out on the bike. I agree. Terry says read the sustainable transport zone, authorities going after low-hanging fruit. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, if people can be persuaded not to use cars for trivial journeys, literally, I can walk to my local convenience store and carry a small bag back. That's fine. The problem is when you have to do more complex journeys. If you've got to go to hospital, for example, you've got to take somebody with you. That was one of the exemptions, which is now in the revised plan, which is good. And yeah, it's good to see motorcycles finally being recognised as being congestion busting vehicles. It's even the government has said that. So right, on with the next section of the show, where I start to talk about some motorcycle news. So let's have a quick look at what we have today regarding motorcycles. The first story is about Moto Morini. Now, you probably know they're an Italian motorcycle manufacturer. They actually have a long and very complex history. Now, they were founded by Alfonso Morini in Bologna in 1937. That company survived until 1987 when they were bought out by Cagiva. Cagiva then sold Morini to the Texas Pacific Group. I believe they were an investment company, who also incidentally owned Ducati at the same time. That was 1996. In April 1999, the name rights were brought back to Italy when they were purchased by Morini Franco Motori SPA. That's a company founded by the original Morini's nephew in 1954. In that incarnation, you probably know that Morini built some large capacity V twin motorcycles, but they collapsed into liquidation in late 2010. They managed to restart production in 2012 after the remains of that company were acquired by Eagle Bike, which is a company run by two Italian entrepreneurs. They came out with a trio of 1200cc models. The bad news was that they didn't sell in any volume. In fact, they only were producing around 300 motorcycles a year, so the company was unviable, collapsed again, and in late 2018, the latest move, it was announced that ownership had been transferred to the Chinese Zhongnen Group. Now, the latest incarnation of Morini, what they did was they went ahead and sourced the 650 double overhead cam 8-valve 650 parallel twin motor produced by CF Moto, who are actually just down the road from Zhongnen. They developed the X-Cape 650 using that motor. Morini then recreated their dealer network from nothing, and they launched this Chinese-built motorcycle in Italy. And by last year, the sales of this one motorcycle were up to around 3,500 bikes in just 10 months. Now, two more machines, an Urban Scrambler and a Naked Roadster, they have been designed on the same 650 platform. They were announced last year, and having established themselves on a firmer footing, Morini plan to move on from their single range of motorcycles. So it looks like what we'll be seeing is the latest adventure tour, the X-Cape 1200. I think I've featured that on this show before. That's going to turn up at the Milan show, apparently. That gets a larger, obviously much more powerful 1200cc version of the V-twin motor, which has been lifted from the Corsaro, which was the development of the previous owners, but it's been upgraded to Euro 5 compliance. Now, it's also expected that there'll be a modern retro motorcycle powered by that same engine to appear this year. There are also rumours of a new range of 925cc V-twin models, which are expected to include a sports tourer, a naked, or possibly even a sports bike. And even more odd in the rumour mill is that there could be a throwback 350 V twin. Now, if you have a motorcycling history which is as long as mine, sadly you probably remember this little bike. It was the Motor Marini 3.5 350 V twin, and it's being suggested that they might just be working on a lightweight modern classic to sort of recreate this machine, because it would drop into that sort of market that Royal Enfield have so cleverly identified and flooded with models. Now, I have to admit, I always fancied the Marini 3.5 from the late 70s, but right now it would have to drop into a hotly contested slot. You know, as I've talked about, Royal Enfield have brought up numerous versions of their 350 single cylinder, but Triumph and Harley Davidson have both dropped in new machines as well, so lots of tough competition for a baby 350, though I have to say I would like to see it. If there is a chance of a bike which would make, oops, the wrong button, a successful range, there's also word that we may be seeing a 750cc motorcycle launched in adventure naked motorcycle guises, and in some ways I think that possibly would be Marini's best shot, because there are frankly lots of bikes in the 900cc bracket and you're going to have to go up against those. There's a bit of a dearth of middleweights, sort of. You've got plenty of A2 license compliance machines, but what do you step up to? The sort of 600, 650s are virtually evaporated. There's a new 750 Hornet, there's the 800 Suzuki's, but if Marini could drop something into that sort of similar bracket, maybe they could make a success of it. But what I hope is that they don't flood the market with new bikes which actually end up competing with themselves, because you know, I think the look for a Chinese built Italian motorcycle, it might be smaller than they think. Right, okay, why have I still got that banner running? I have no idea. So what else have we got today? Well, a few shows back I reported that Kawasaki's Ninja E1 and the Z E1 are likely to feature at this autumn's Milan show, and appearing on showroom floors as early as a 2024 model. But what about the other motorcycle with the electric powertrain that Kawasaki have shown off? And this was the Ninja HEV. Excuse me. Let me just get the picture of that up on screen. There it is. Bring it in a bit closer. There we go. You can see that now. Now, Kawasaki were first of the big four from Japan, the first of their manufacturers to show off prototype machines. And it's looking like the HEV hybrid, which we have seen out on track at Suzuka, if I remember correctly. First talked about in 2020. Appeared last summer at the Japanese MotoGP event. It looks likely that it will be seen at next year's shows rather than this year's show, so they're going to save the hybrid for 2024, and then it'll appear as a 2025 model. Now, I have to say I am looking forward to road tests on this bike, a lot more actually than the road tests of their full electric, because it's only got a 125 equivalent performance. This bike, although it's got a Ninja 400 engine in it, it can switch between full EV mode for use in town, ICE for faster runs out of town, with the battery being recharged at the same time. But the really interesting feature that it gets is the boost mode, where both the ICE and the electric motors work together to give much zippier acceleration, and it's said to offer 650-like performance in that mode. So that is what I'm quite excited to see. Now, don't forget, if you want to see this show, the time to look for it is on Wednesdays and Sundays. It goes out at 11 normally. If you miss a show, you can catch up on YouTube. That's the easiest place to find my videos, Survival Skills UK over on YouTube. Don't forget that all important UK on the end though. All the shows are over there, as there are many other videos on biking issues. I mentioned that the show normally goes out at 11. Next week will be an exception. Wednesday I will be broadcasting at 10 AM because I am entertaining some friends who are visiting from America, so I need to get out a little bit earlier than I can do if I show the 11 o'clock slot. Right, okay, back to electric motorcycles again. Well, where are we going with the electric bikes? Ducati have spoken out against electric motorcycles, despite the fact they actually supply the Moto E machinery. Triumph seemingly have shelved their own TE1 electric bike development, and some definitely doubted we'd be seeing Kawasaki's electric bikes appear, though it does look like they are going to. The interesting thing is, of course, many of the hotly touted electric bikes are from startups, and as I've talked about in previous shows, many of those sadly have turned out to be vaporware. Now, vaporware sort of it means a product announced, maybe even promoted by a company which then fails to appear. Why do we have so-called vaporware? Well, one reason is designers being overly ambitious about their plans, which leads them to make announcements before they've got fully developed and functional products. So even if they do manage to bring it to market, they often face significant delays and obstacles to production, and of course, lacking funding, some products never appear, or if they do, they collapse pretty darn quickly. Bramo, Alta, Mission Motors and Raw are all in the history books now when it comes to electric two-wheel startups. They never got any further. And sometimes what happens, of course, is you get a long delayed product. When it finally reaches customers, it's probably not what they were promised in the first place, and potentially this is what appears to be happening to Damon. Now, I'll give you, here's a picture of that particular motorcycle. It's very attractive, very smooth looking sports bike. This is the Damon Hypersport. Now, one of the big selling points, in fact according to some reports it was the original raison d'etre for the machine, is that it's fitted with a co-pilot system that uses 2 cameras, 3 radar emitters, gives you a 360-degree warning zone, and the rider gets warnings of potential hazards through heads-up displays in a matching helmet and haptic feedback to the rider. Now, helmet aside, there's nothing particularly remarkable about the co-pilot that hasn't appeared on cars already. And I guess that Damon will have faced a big challenge actually making them robust, compact and reliable enough to cope with fitment to a motorcycle. Now, another gimmick or a feature, you can choose your own term, is that the bike is supposedly to be fitted with adjustable bars and pegs, so the bike can sort of reset between a sports and a comfort position at the touch of a button. Now, that's actually a feature pinched directly from Yamaha's 1980s concept bike, the Morpho. But what really caught press attention was that Damon promised an electric motorcycle with some magic numbers: 200 horsepower, 200 miles of range and top speed of 200 miles per hour, and they are still promising that on their website. Now, fitted with a 20 kilowatt hour battery, a fairly big one, 14.4 is what's fitted to the Zeros, for instance. I think they've just squeezed a few more kilowatt hours out of it, so they're up to 15.5 or something. But the bike was claimed to be not much heavier than BMW's S1000RR, and it unfortunately would hit the road at a price of nearly $40,000, so not cheap. Alright, so where are we now? Well, in terms of the performance, I said a couple of years ago that individually any of those 200s was possible. 200 mile per hour performance, definitely available, and the Damon motor is definitely 200 horsepower. They claim 248. If you ride slowly enough, you could eke out 200 miles from a 20 kilowatt hour battery, but all three at the same time, I would say not a chance. The energy density of batteries, even one as big as 20 kilowatt hour, simply isn't good enough. Now, how would they fit a bigger battery in? Well, it would first of all cause more weight problems. The existing bike is expected to weigh in at somewhere around about 480 to 500 pounds in rolling trim if it ever sees the road. but you then have an issue of squeezing it physically into the limited space on the bike. Now, Damon have currently got their big capacity battery into the bike by building it as part of the frame. So the battery is part of the actual structure of the bikes, which of course means that they have options, very limited when it comes to trying to extend the battery. They want to make the battery bigger. Essentially, they've got to build a new frame. So even if they manage to find more energy dense cells to squeeze into what their existing design, the bigger the battery, then the longer the recharge cycle. Now, Damon claimed that the Hypersport could be the first production electric motorcycle to support level 3 fast charging. They say that would take the battery from 0 to 80% in 20 minutes, and there certainly are technologies out there which can do that. Now, the bike was first talked about in 2018. First people to order were promised delivery by 2021. That date slipped to 2022, then 2023. The latest statements from the firm suggest that they say they are looking at production models rolling off the line from the first quarter of next year, and they reckon that they'll have turned out around 1,000 units by the end of next year. So basically, you're looking towards the end of next year. So that's quite a long slippage already. And they're also saying they're looking at, which is a bit of an interesting term, isn't it? It's obviously not guaranteed delivery. And it's possible that this is because Damon are requiring another round of funding. They need $50 million apparently. So they say they've taken 3,300 pre-orders, despite the unlikely performance claims and the bike that's only been seen in mock-ups. But there is some positive news. It said they have a rolling machine. Now, the bike's not production ready, it's certainly not road legal, but it is apparently finally fit to ride, according to a report which I found in the online magazine Wired the other day. But having read the article closely, it doesn't seem that the journalist who wrote it either got a ride on the bike or even got to see it being ridden. So I'd say the story for Damon has still got some way to go. Right, don't forget, if you've got any comments on things I've talked about today, do drop me a line. I'm more than interested in hear what you think about bikes like Damon. Personally, I think they'll struggle to get that one on the road, but hey ho, what do I know? Alright, so what else to talk about? Well, we're up to the, excuse me while I stretch a bit, we're up to the final in-depth element for today's show. So we have been talking about how we make life safer for motorcyclists. This is probably the final instalment. I keep saying that, don't I? But it goes all the way back to the beginning of the summer when I first looked at a poster campaign that appeared where they were placing Ride Safe and Think Bike posters up along the rides. Now, I looked at the actual crash data. I couldn't see that there was any evidence for one of those roads that was targeted for the Ride Safe signs. I didn't see any crash problem on that particular route. Historically in 10 years, I think there'd been one serious crash. But the route they decided not to target with the Think Bike signs actually had a very significant number of car-bike collisions. Now, that kind of led me down a bit of a rabbit hole, looking at the data that's collected, what we've got, what we can look at already, and what's missing, particularly near-miss data, and why that's crucial, because it could help us predict where collisions are going to happen rather than being reactive and looking at places where collisions have happened. Fatal accidents are no real indicator of where another fatal accident is likely to happen because they are so rare, frankly. Now, something that I then looked at is what's available in terms of data from connected vehicles. Now, probably more data than most people realize is being collected by modern vehicles and sent back to the manufacturers. Now, the latest moves are that that anonymized data will actually start to be available to road safety bodies. Now, what about the proactive safety systems that are increasingly being fitted to modern cars, and we're starting to see it on bikes? Now, I've just talked about the co-pilot system from the Damon Hypersport, and it's said to be one of the most advanced rider assistance systems on the planet. Now, how does it work? Well, for starters, it takes input from 3 distance measuring radar sensors, and those are backed up with a pair of high definition cameras. That data's processed by onboard computer basically. That generates warnings for the rider if a threat's detected. There are visual alerts via a TFT screen, and if an obstruction head is detected and the rider needs to brake firmly, the system will vibrate the handlebars, and Damon say that means don't even think, just hit the brakes. Now, as I said earlier, I can't see anything particularly new in this if you've driven a recent model car. You know, for example, you can get haptic feedback via the steering wheel. But it all depends on a fair amount of expensive, heavy and likely fragile on-bike hardware. And features such as full collision warning, cross-traffic alert, automatic emergency braking, all the stuff that you're finding now, they're all a bit last minute. You may stop, but what about the vehicle behind you? What if it isn't fitted with the same kind of driver aids? Now, recent cars also are able to take in information as they progress. So you can detect speed limits, for example, and adaptive cruise control will automatically adjust speed. You're getting in-vehicle signing, which repeats the road signs that you've just passed and gives you a warning inside the vehicle, which is quite handy in some ways. But the system is far from perfect, as I found out driving using a system like this in New Zealand just this year. So what else do we get? Well, one system is a green light optimal speed advisory. That tells road users what speed to use to pass through a sequence of traffic lights so they're all on green, and the plan here is that reduces congestion and also emissions, because you don't get stop-start traffic, everybody flows nicely along the road, and it improves fuel consumption, of course, along the way. And most people are probably familiar with the call data, which is collected from vehicles when the airbags, if, for example, activate in a car or a bike falls over. But what about pure push notification technology? Could that be integrated into motorcycles? Now, if you are a user of Waze, the navigation app, you probably know what I'm talking about. For example, Waze provides on-the-fly changes of route. If your chosen route turns out to have an accident or a delay on it, then the system will send an alert and it will calculate a new route for you. Now, that's useful, but Waze also provides some proactive alerts to hazards ahead. One that pops up which isn't particularly useful is the one that says policeman. Usually they're not there anymore, but hey ho. But I got a car stranded ahead alert on the system the other day on a section of smart motorway, and that was actually quite useful. Now, the car had actually made it into a refuge, but it was good to be warned before I came across it, just in case it was in a live lane. Now, in theory, we should get that warning from the overhead gantry signs on a smart motorway if there's a lane closed by a hazard ahead. But first, they have to be illuminated promptly, and the evidence is that they take minutes to light up, because the highways people say they need to check that the vehicle is actually there by sending out a driver to see, rather than actually using their CCTV cameras. That beats me. I don't understand that at all, but hey ho. And it just seems to be delays in the control room generally, so it likely means hundreds of vehicles are passing a stranded vehicle without any warning. And that happened to me on the way to Manchester last year for one of my presentations. Traffic was light, fortunately, and I was able to see the stopped car and truck in my lane quite a long way off and get out of that lane in plenty of time. But there's another issue, and this is one that really should have been obvious to the people who designed the smart motorways. I'm sure it didn't escape their notice, they just didn't warn us about it. Even if the overhead gantry signs light up promptly, if you've already passed the final gantry between you and hazard, there's no way you're going to get a warning from that gantry. You've already gone past it, so you will encounter the stopped vehicle without an alert. So why not create a live alert system that works inside the car? Why not use an app like Waze? Get that a notification pushed straight to the vehicle, to the road user. You could use it for other purposes, alerters to queues, accident hazards ahead once they are known that they are happening on the road network. Give drivers and riders the chance to slow down or change lanes or whatever it takes to avoid a potential collision. Now, until such time as all cars and bikes have live alert systems built in, using an app would still allow drivers and riders to pick up warnings like this. Now, what's more, as I talked about last week, there's a surprising amount of data collected by modern vehicles, and motorcycles included. So if that data can be collected live, and I mentioned last time that heavy braking, loss of traction, sudden swerves would all be indicative of the driver reacting to a possible hazard ahead, why couldn't that too be redistributed as push notifications? Maybe not if just one vehicle responds, but if you get a whole sequence of vehicles triggering this data, then there's obviously a problem. Then you use geolocation to determine where everybody is, including vehicles approaching that problem area. Then the app could warn drivers and riders that there is a issue nearby. The sort of thing I'm thinking about here is the heavy braking that happens as people come around the blind bend and discover that there's a back of a queue for a temporary traffic light in front of them, something that's happening all the time on roads today. Go one step beyond that and you get pure vehicle to vehicle. It's known as V2V communication. Now, V2V allows individual vehicles to communicate with each other. They can send data such as speed, position and direction to other vehicles around them, and that way, if a potential conflict is detected by the vehicle that you're in, receiving that data and integrating it into your own movement, then that could flash up an alert to a driver and even apply automated braking. It's easy to see how this example could prevent collisions at blind junctions, a real problem out on the open road. And it seems to me that the group of road users that most stands to benefit from this kind of information is powered two-wheelers, simply because we are vulnerable if things go wrong. Now, my own thinking is that rather than manufacturers messing around with what I honestly think are gimmicks like active suspension and multiple riding modes, particularly when they can be changed by app, why not give some thought to how you can provide riders with better information about their riding environment? I think that would produced far more benefit in terms of road safety than adjustable suspension, for example, ever will. Let me know your thoughts. I'll be very interested to hear. Now, don't forget that's today's show. The next one is going to be at 10 o'clock. That's Wednesday. As I said, I will be entertaining guests, so do remember that next show is earlier than normal. Now, if you want to support this show, that would be most appreciated. I would just like to give a quick shout out to this week's coffee supporters and subscribers: NJ, Damo, Clive, Paul, Brian, Christine, Claire, Will and Anonymous. So thanks mightily for your support. And if you're not a supporter yet, why not pop over to my coffee page and have a look at it. And there's plenty of free stuff to read over there, which you can enjoy, and you can find plenty of subscriber and supporter content over there as well. It's probably the biggest resource, I would think, for better riding information anywhere on the web. So drop me a coffee, get your name up here in lights. So that's pretty much all for today. Just a couple of comments here. Terry says the Marini 3.5 was a pin-up bike for him. Yeah, I loved it, I must admit. Sue SG says Damon sounds like the old Norton. My old boss put a deposit down, never to be seen again as far as I know. That's so sad, isn't it? I think that's that Norton was definitely, a scam. And I wouldn't say Damon are quite there, but you have to be very careful putting money into a startup like this. I honestly think. So also says great idea for the warnings. They'd have to be built into a system to avoid abuse. Well, again, it depends how you work this one. It can be built into the vehicle by the manufacturer, but I still think that there is room for some kind of official app. If the highways people can turn on the gantry signs, there's no reason why you can't have an official highways authority app on your phone which pops up an alert for you inside your vehicle. I think it's easy enough. I think it can be done. Right, anyway, that is it for today. As I say, 10 o'clock in the morning for Wednesday's show. Hope to see you then. And if you are out on the bike, the clouds seem to have blown over again for the moment. We've got some blue sky outside. If you are out on the bike today, do stay shiny side up. Thank you once more for looking in. I'm Kevin Williams, and this has been Elevenses.